Tonight, we take you inside an academic field that has grown dramatically in scale, visibility, and nuance over the last 2 years, the study of modern Satanism, a field that, despite decades of sensational headlines, political controversy, and moral panic, is only now being systematically mapped by scholars with fresh data, new digital tools, and a renewed focus on distinguishing fact from cultural mythology. From the split between theistic and non-theistic Satanists, to the long shadow of the 1980s Satanic Panic, to a new wave of research on far-right online subcultures using satanic aesthetics, this is a story about how academia is finally catching up to a topic long dismissed, distorted, or simply misunderstood. Over the past 2 years, a surge of scholarly work has begun to reshape our understanding of Satanism, not as a monolithic movement, but as a complex constellation of beliefs, rituals, identities, and communities. Universities across North America, Europe, and Australia have produced a steady stream of peer-reviewed articles, graduate theses, and ethnographic studies examining the lived realities of Satanists in the 21st century. For decades, popular culture tended to merge all forms of Satanism into a single, frightening caricature. But as new research now demonstrates, modern Satanism is far more diverse than the public has ever been told. Non-theistic Satanists understand Satan symbolically, as a metaphor for individualism, rebellion, or secular activism. Theistic Satanists regard Satan as a literal spiritual entity, with diverse traditions and ritual systems. Other left-hand path practitioners blend satanic symbolism with broader occult frameworks. The academic field is finally acknowledging this complexity. Many dissertations from 2023 to 2025 argue that the biggest challenge in studying Satanism is not a lack of primary sources, but a lack of conceptual clarity. Too often, outsiders impose categories practitioners reject. Researchers are now undoing decades of misconception. One sociologist writes that studying Satanism requires undoing 40 years of cultural damage caused by the Satanic Panic, law enforcement misunderstandings, and media sensationalism that blurred the line between minority religion and criminality. Between 1980 and the mid-1990s, the United States and parts of Europe were swept by what historians now describe as the Satanic Panic, a moral panic driven by unfounded allegations of ritual abuse amplified by talk shows, sensational writers, and flawed assumptions about organized satanic conspiracies. The results were devastating. Even today, its impact lingers. Recent academic work explores how the panic's residue continues shaping public perception. A 2024 thesis argues that the Satanic Panic never fully ended. It mutated. Instead of claims about secret cults in suburbs, the panic now lives online through conspiracy communities that recycle tropes of ritualistic evil. But researchers also document how modern Satanists challenge these misconceptions. Activists with groups like the Satanic Temple engage in legal battles and public campaigns to redefine the meaning of Satanism in public spheres. Scholars note internal debates between groups seeking public legitimacy and those preferring privacy. Still, the trend is clear. Satanists today are increasingly visible, politically active, and willing to confront misinformation. One of the most wide-ranging developments involves scholars using digital ethnography to study Satanism online, in forums, social platforms, encrypted communities, and subcultural spaces. Researchers have discovered that some online spaces use satanic iconography not as religious symbol, but as aesthetic rebellion. Others use occult motifs as performative shock value. Meanwhile, a tiny number of extremist groups appropriate satanic imagery for branding or recruitment. Academic work emphasizes that these extremist groups are not representative of Satanism. Most modern Satanists explicitly reject them, but the conflation between genuine religious Satanists and extremist groups remains a public safety issue. Algorithms frequently blur these categories, recommending extremist content to users searching benign occult topics. A 2024 study warns that content moderation systems must better distinguish between legitimate religious groups, aesthetic communities, and extremist recruiters. Without nuance, moderation systems misclassify harmless communities and fail to identify genuinely dangerous actors. Researchers consistently emphasize that actual Satanists are not driving radicalization. In fact, many satanic groups openly condemn extremist misappropriation. Still, sensational headlines often overshadow the nuance, which is why academic research is crucial. For outsiders, the distinction between theistic and non-theistic Satanism seems simple, but for insiders and scholars, the differences are deeper. Theistic Satanists often describe their path as devotional or mystical, with practices including ritual, meditation, spirit work, or ceremonial magic. Non-theistic Satanists frame Satan as metaphor, often rooted in political activism, secular humanism, or individualist philosophy. Scholars highlight tensions around public representation. Non-theistic groups are more visible, especially activist organizations engaged in legal battles. Theistic practitioners sometimes feel overshadowed or misinterpreted because journalists tend to focus on the more accessible activist groups. Researchers also document the ritual diversity of theistic communities. Many traditions have complex lineages, structured rites, and sophisticated theological systems. One ethnographer states that theistic Satanism is the least understood religious minority in the West. This is why recent academic output matters. It distinguishes lived religion from conspiracy fiction. Another fast-growing research area studies the intersection of occult aesthetics and online radicalization. Some far-right groups borrow satanic imagery not from belief, but from a desire to appear transgressive or anti-establishment. This mimicry confuses outsiders and complicates platform moderation. Researchers warn that failing to differentiate symbolism from belief leads to flawed policy and policing. Many studies emphasize that actual Satanists oppose extremist appropriation and are often early critics of violent fringe groups. Scholars also examine the cultural visibility of groups like the Satanic Temple and the Church of Satan. These organizations have radically different philosophies, but both influence public discourse. The Satanic Temple's legal activism has drawn mainstream attention to secular interpretations of Satanism, while the Church of Satan continues to be significant historically and philosophically. Scholars also highlight internal critiques. Theistic Satanists often argue that high-profile non-theistic groups overshadow spiritual traditions that have existed privately for decades. Modern research increasingly treats Satanism as one branch of the broader left-hand path, which includes Luciferianism, demonolatry, chaos magic, and other esoteric streams. The left-hand path emphasizes self-deification, transformation, and sovereignty. This broader framework helps scholars avoid collapsing diverse traditions under the label of Satanism. Studies show that left-hand path traditions have grown considerably online due to digital publishing, occult education platforms, and algorithm-driven exposure. As we examine the past 2 years of research, one theme stands out: clarity. For policymakers, clarity prevents harmful legislation rooted in fear. For journalists, it prevents the return of panic narratives. For platforms, it enables accurate classification and moderation. For researchers, clarity increases trust, encouraging practitioners to participate in interviews, surveys, and ethnographic studies. The academic field is maturing. Scholars argue that we do not need to agree with or participate in Satanism to study it responsibly. We only need to understand it accurately. As we look forward, researchers predict more nuanced digital ethnography, greater focus on theistic communities, deeper legal analysis, more work on identity intersectionality, and continued study of moral panics as sociological phenomena. The future of research is wide open. Modern Satanism is not a monolith. It is not a conspiracy. It is a diverse set of identities, ranging from secular activism to devotional theism to esoteric spirituality. And after years of neglect, academia is finally giving this field the nuanced attention it deserves. Misrepresentation has consequences. Moral panics do harm. Conflating religion with extremism endangers communities. Over the last 2 years, scholars have helped to redraw the map of understanding. They've shown us what Satanism is, what it isn't, and how much more complex the truth is than the myths surrounding it. For a field long trapped between sensationalism and stigma, accuracy is transformative. Thank you for listening.